The drowsy chronicler greets you tonight from the shadows of history. You're no gallant knight, no silver-tongued bard, not even the village drunkard drowning in cheap ale. No, your role cuts deeper. You're the reluctant disciplinarian expected to corral them all. A TUDA constable sworn to enforce laws with empty coffers, blunt instruments, and hollow authority. The crown barely acknowledges your existence. The townsfolk resent your every breath. Your most powerful weapon? A damp scrap of parchment bearing someone else's decrees. Each dawn finds you chasing cut purses through muddy alleys, hauling stiffened corpses from plague houses, breaking up brawls between men who could snap you like kindling, only to be fined for lacking enthusiasm during these grim duties. Children mock your stumbling gait. Fate pisses on your threadbare cloak. You're punished for crimes you couldn't prevent. By every measure, you're performing your sworn duties. Yet gratitude remains as scarce as winter sunlight. Before we descend into another week of bureaucratic brutality and petty humiliations, grant me one small courtesy. Tell me where you're listening from and what ungodly hour finds you awake. There's strange comfort knowing these tales of historical despair echo across time zones. If you'd like early access to more spirals into forgotten misery, ad-free audio episodes, or simply wish to support this chronicle, the Patreon link awaits in the description. But for now, recline, settle in. Let the unraveling begin. The chapel bell shatters your sleep before dawn's first light. For leaden tolls reverberate through the rafters. Each strikes slow as a hanging rope and just as unforgiving. You blink against the oppressive darkness. Soot-stained ceiling beams hover like gallows above your palate. The straw beneath you shifts with unseen life. Lice, fleas, perhaps the latest rat to claim squatters' rights. It matters not. The bell's iron tongue proclaims Monday, which means you're already behind schedule. You rise like a poorly strung marionette, each protesting joint resisting the morning's demands. Your jerkin clings with a stench that transcends mere sweat, a rancid bouquet of sour ale, mildewed wool, dried blood, and that peculiar reek of damp fleece that never truly dries. Peeling it from your chest reveals a flake of something best left unidentified. You shake the garment once, watching some unnameable particle drift to the floor, then pull the foul thing back over your head. Your boots offer no reprieve, one cracked at the toe, the other leaking with every step through tomorrow's puddles. Still, they're yours. That's more than can be said for the tavern loft you inhabit, a space granted not by hospitality, but municipal decree. The innkeeper tolerates your presence because the mayor's word is law, but never misses an opportunity to remind you of his reluctant charity. A proper constable should be afoot by the third bell. He sneered last week as you limped in, still dripping from fishing a drunkard from the mill pond. Your explanation about vomit-related delays fell on deaf ears. The punishment? Deducted from your supper ration. This morning brings no breakfast either. The kitchen fires died hours ago, leaving no warm ale, no porridge, not even a crust abandoned on the cutting board. You pat your pockets in vain hope of migratory crumbs, finding only frayed twine, a bent nail, and that cursed parchment scroll listing today's inevitable failures. The stairs groan like tortured souls as you descend into the silent tavern. Last night's revelries left their mark. Overturned benches, sticky puddles of dubious origin, a pair of breeches abandoned by their owner. You leave the mess untouched. Cleaning isn't your duty. Your responsibilities cut deeper. Outside, the morning air slaps you like a wet rag. Rain, of course. The cobblestones gleam with moisture and something more sinister. Overflowing gutters vomit their contents into streets where the slaughterhouse drain hasn't run clear in weeks. The stench is a physical presence. Wet earth, rotting meat, wood smoke, and the eye-watering reek of the public privy behind the chapel, which from the smell, someone has been using as target practice. You breathe through your mouth and march onward. First stop, the constable's office, a grandiose title for what amounts to a glorified broom closet wedged beside the pillory. The door sticks, the roof leaks, and the records live in a crate beneath a bench, smelling perpetually of wet dog. Inside waits your partner for the week, Thomas, 3 things you are not: young, cheerful, and dry. He hands you your staff, a split ashwood travesty already warping at both ends, and a fresh list of fines to collect. His smile goes unreturned. Most names are familiar. The tanner fined for improper waste disposal, a polite term for dumping guts in the stream. The weaver's apprentice delinquent on a noise violation. His singing offended the mayor's wife, and old widow Alfreda accused of spreading rumors about the priest's mistress. You'll save her for last, she bites. The parchment curls in your grip as the drizzle thickens into proper rain. Your boots begin their slow, familiar surrender. The high street stirs to life around you. Shop shutters creaking open, apprentices sweeping refuse into the road, a barrow of dead eels overturning outside the baker's. No one lifts a finger to clean the spill. The fishmonger curses the cobbles and storms off. You step around the mess. One eel twitches. You pretend not to notice. A beggar's cough snags your attention. He might be old or just looks it, toothless, shoeless, legless. When his request for a farthing meets your empty pockets, he spits near your boots and mutters about useless dogs in uniform. You nod politely and move on. At the stocks, someone's decorated the platform with last night's ale. You pause to assess whether it warrants documentation. It doesn't, just more stomach than liquor. Sighing, you lean your staff against the post and unfold the damp parchment. The list somehow looks longer now, though you know it isn't. You pick the nearest address and knock. Silence. A second attempt meets equal indifference. A child materializes from the alley, gnawing a root and watching with eyes too sharp for his age. Tanner's gone to dump stink in the fields, he says. You nod. The boy doesn't move. When you offer imaginary coin, he laughs and vanishes. By mid-morning, you've collected one empty promise, two creative insults, and a stone to the shin from a girl you cited for dumping slops in the street. Her father threatened to report you for harassing children. You nodded and walked away. Your wages don't cover arguments. The town square buzzes with market day activity, stalls erupting like boils, buzzing with flies, reeking of meat, wet wool, and dashed hopes. You tighten your grip on the staff and brace for chaos. The first scuffle erupts near the bread stall, two women shrieking over rights to the last dry loaf. You raise your voice, suggesting they take grievances to the baker. They ignore you completely. One calls the other a __. The other retaliates with which. The loaf hits the ground. You note. Disturbance resolved by gravity. The butcher's roar slices through the market din like his own cleaver. Face crimson, arm waving, he points at a darting figure. A boy no older than 10, arms overflowing with sausages, bare feet slapping against wet cobblestones. He's quick. You're not. You give chase and immediately regret it. The mud conspires against you, swallowing your boot to the ankle, nearly claiming it entirely. A clump of dung explodes against your leg in brown fireworks. Laughter erupts from the stalls. You right yourself with undignified flailing, slipping twice before finding purchase. The boy weaves between carts with practiced ease, leaps a puddle like a seasoned hurdler, and disappears down Fish Lane. You follow, lungs burning, heart hammering against your ribs like a prisoner demanding release. A goose hisses at your passing. Your toe catches on a basket, sending you sprawling forward with a curse aimed equally at God, butchers, and sausages in general. Ahead, a flash of movement. The boy rounding the corner between smithy and weaver's shed. You surge forward triumphantly, only to plunge face first into a puddle smelling of rotten eggs and life's cruel jokes. You lie there for 3 heartbeats, cheek pressed against the cold cobbles, trying to remember why breathing matters. Mocking applause echoes behind you. Pushing upright reveals the bitter truth. Boy gone, sausages vanished. What little pride you possessed thoroughly trampled into the muck. Wiping your face with your sleeve proves counterproductive. Your staff? Missing. You look up. A spotted sow chews thoughtfully on your only weapon. You close your eyes. Welcome to Monday. Dusk finds him wedged between Cooper's barrels, shivering with equal parts cold and fury, still too young to understand mortality. 12 at most, barefoot and filth-smeared, hands glistening with stolen grease. He glares like you've personally ruined his life, which, Technically, you're about to. Come out, you say. He doesn't budge. You try again, deploying your best constable voice. He spits, impressively accurate for cooperation. Reaching in, you grab his arm. He struggles, but after today's pigpen marathon, you've no patience left. You haul him out by the scruff like a sack of moldy grain. His tunic tears, revealing ribs that tell stories no child should know. A half-hearted kick connects with your knee. You pretend it doesn't sting. The march through town becomes a perverse parade. Past the still-fuming butcher. Past the baker who looks personally violated. The sausages, it transpires, weren't mere snacks, destined for some cousin's wedding feast. Their absence now a capital offense. The boy stays silent. You don't ask his name. The records will call him offender, male, small. The stocks crouch in the chapel's shadow, their damp wood groaning as you maneuver the boy into position. His final wriggle nearly unbalances you, so you lift him bodily onto the bench. His feet dangle. His eyes fix on some distant horizon. No tears. That unsettles you more than screams would. The baker insists on supervising as you fasten the ankle restraints. Swollen from last week's rain, the wood fights your efforts. The latch pin takes 3 hammer strikes to seat. Someone laughs. You wipe hands on your jerkin, transferring more grease than you remove, then announce the sentence. 1 hour. Standard for petty theft, though you know each second will stretch longer than the chase that led here. His mother arrives before the hour's half done. Neither young nor old, just worn thin by poverty's relentless grind. Hair scraped back, shoulders permanently braced for impact. She barrels through gawkers like a siege engine wrapped in rags. Matthew, she shrieks. The boy flinches, first genuine reaction you've seen. She rounds on you with eyes that could melt iron. Explanations die unspoken. Her apron bundle moves, you brace for stones. Instead, spoiled cabbage explodes against your chest in wet green shrapnel. The crowd roars. Wiping your face achieves nothing. Another cabbage follows. Less accurate, equally fragrant. A turnip arcs from some brat's hand. A chicken bone skitters off the pillory. Then, the missile, a bread crust, hard as quarry stone, impacts your nose with sniper precision. Eyes water instantly. The crowd erupts as if you've been unhorsed in a tournament. Through blurred vision, you spot the culprit, a baker's apprentice, already melting into the mob. The boy watches you now, not smug, just puzzled, as if wondering whether this humiliation is punishment protocol or just what happens to constables. You wish you knew. Then the mayor passes. His new doublet, forest green with silver trim, fur collar untouched by weather since Michaelmas, could feed the Stocks boy's family for a year. He glances at the scene. Sniveling constable, cabbage-battered jerkin, bloodied nose. One eyebrow lifts. A faint sniff, as if something died on his shoe. Then he walks on. The mother tries grabbing her son. You intercept with a warning look. She shrieks about starving children and rich men's lapdogs. You mentally file it under grievances no one will read. The itch in your scalp intensifies. Rain returns, soft, insistent, soaking everything without the decency of being dramatic. The boy shivers. So do you, though admitting it would violate some unwritten code. When the hour finally drags to its close, most spectators have wandered off, their appetite for cruelty sated. The mother remains, arms crossed, eyes burning. You release the restraints. The boy limps to her without complaint, without backward glance. His ankles bear the wood's angry teeth marks. She grips his arm, not comfort, but ownership. They leave wordlessly. You let them. Cleanup falls to you. Technically not your duty, but when the stocks are found filthy tomorrow, the blame will stick to you like cabbage stench. Using what was once your shirt sleeve, you wipe down the bench, trying to ignore your throbbing nose. It's bleeding again, not seriously, just enough to annoy, like everything else. Back at the office, Thomas hums some tavern ditty. He takes in your state, jerkin stiff with cabbage pulp, nose crusted red, and wisely says nothing. Offers a crust. You decline. Bread near your face holds no appeal now. Sitting hurts. Breathing hurts. The record book mocks you with blank pages. You write, name unknown. Age approximate 12. Crime, theft of sausages. Apprehended near Cooper's. Resistance, minimal. Punishment, 1 hour stocks. Outcome, released. No mention of cabbages. No record of the crowd. Just your name at the bottom, carefully pinned to avoid blood smudges. As the ink dries, the door opens. The mayor's clerk, young, smug, reeking of lavender, delivers a folded parchment with poisoned politeness. It's a citation. Improper record-keeping on municipal punishment. Missing witness signatures. No inventory of stolen goods. No initials on release time. You stare. He waits. You sign. He leaves. You sit watching ink dry, nose whistling faintly. Thomas offers the crust again. This time you take it. Stale, but warm from his pocket. You chew slowly. Outside, the rain strengthens. The pounding on your tavern shutters arrives before dawn's first whisper. Not the chapel bell this time. Thomas lets himself in, breathless and disgustingly cheerful for this unholy hour. You've been reassigned, he announces, as if delivering glad tidings. You sit up blinking in the darkness. Your blanket reeks of mildew, and the itching in your scalp has graduated from nuisance to full-scale rebellion. A spider crawls from your boot as you reach for it. You don't scream. Exhaustion has burned that reflex out of you. The reassignment is simple. 2 fresh corpses in the pauper's quarter. The death cart needs loading. You've been volunteered. When you ask why Thomas can't do it, he grins. He gets pillory duty today. Less mess, more heckling. You make a mental note to trip him later. The cart waits near the fishmonger's, wheels already caked in substances best left unidentified. The driver, a wheezing relic called Elias, smells like stale ale and existential dread. He tosses you a rag without preamble. For your face, he grunts. If they start coughing, you drape the reeking cloth around your mouth, though it smells worse than the air. The pauper's quarter always stinks of despair, but when plague walks its alleys, the very stones seem to hold their breath. The first body lies on a plank beside a rain barrel, mouth gaping like a broken cellar door, flies holding court in the corners of his eyes. A black X smeared on the neighboring door confirms the diagnosis. You and Elias lift in unison. Rigor mortis has set his limbs at odd angles. He moves like a marionette with tangled strings. His head lolls backward with a disturbing creak, jaw swinging open as if to deliver one final punchline. You load him onto the cart with minimal fuss. The second corpse proves trickier. Still inside her hovel, curled in a straw nest that passes for a bed. The shuttered window traps the smell, sweet rot undercut by something sharply chemical. Her husband blocks your path, arms spread like a scarecrow protecting his field. Not the plague, he insists, voice cracking. Bad turnips. She said so herself. You glance at Elias, who shrugs. The man presses his case. One vomiting episode, some sweating, it's hot in here. Minor bleeding, could have been her monthlies. When you ask when she stopped breathing, he admits it was yesterday morning. You point to the rats already feasting on her left foot. He starts weeping. You take her anyway. As you lift, something in her chest cavity gives way with a sound like wet parchment tearing. Elias mutters what might be a prayer or a tavern order. You grip under her arms, trying not to notice how her flesh yields like overripe fruit. Her head lolls against your shoulder, greasy hair sticking to your cheek. Too late. Part of her is on you now. You leave it. The pretense of cleanliness died weeks ago. The husband follows you out, sobbing curses in equal measure. His thrown object misses. Elias spits. The cart groans as you position her beside her fellow traveler. A tooth escapes her lips, landing on the wood with a delicate tap. You stare at it, wondering about documentation protocols. Decide against it. The return journey crawls. The roads have worsened overnight. Mud, muck, and what might have been a dog before the wheels found it. Every bump makes the corpses shift unsettlingly. One emits a sound between a burp and a death rattle. Just gas, Elias assures you. You nod as if that helps. At a sharp turn, the wheel strikes a pothole hard enough to nearly unseat you. Your face ends up inches from the first corpses, close enough to count the blackened gums, to see his peeling lips. His jaw snaps open with a wet crack, ejecting a burst of something warm against your cheek. You freeze. Elias doesn't notice. Wiping with the same rag achieves nothing but smearing. You decide not to think about it. If this kills you, the damage is already done. Passing the chapel square at 8th bell, you draw stairs then quick aversion. The stench announces you before you're fully visible. At the charnel pit behind the chapel, 3 new guests await, 2 in burlap, 1 half burned. You ask if anyone's keeping records. Elias laughs. Why bother? They'll all be ash by week's end. The woman enters the pit first, her foot catching the edge with a wet thud. You don't look at her face. Wiping your hands on a grass tuft accomplishes precisely nothing. The walk back to the office feels shorter yet endless. Your legs ache. Your back protests. Your face itches. Passers-by give wide berth. One woman crosses herself. A boy hurls a pebble and coins a new nickname. Corpse kisser. You don't correct him. Thomas isn't at the office. Small mercy. Someone's stolen your chair. The fire's dead. You sit on the floor and begin transcribing the day's events in neat, damp lines. 2 bodies collected. Male approximate 40, Chapel Lane. Female approximate 35, Tanner's Alley. Cause, suspected plague. Male, possible poisoning. Female. Resistance from widower. Note, tooth lost during transport. Filed for record. You pause, then add. Ejecta incident. No witnesses. The door creaks open as you're finishing. Thomas enters, frowning, clutching a rolled parchment. You're late, he says, as if you'd been dawdling over plague corpses for fun. He explains about the summons. You remind him about the morning's activities. He shrugs. Doesn't change the schedule. Magistrate wants the brewers served before noon. You take the parchment. Don't speak. Your hands still carry traces of someone's final moments. Your boots squelch with every step. You consider burning the summons. Consider burning Thomas. Instead, you nod and turn back toward the door. Outside, the drizzle persists. You wipe your cheek, but the stain remains. It always does. The merchant's house looms like a smug cathedral of brick and privilege as you arrive just past sunset, parchment in one hand, throbbing knees in the other. The street has gone quiet except for the hiss of drizzle on slate roofs and the distant wail of a badly played lute. 2 doors down, the building's arched doorway and gilded knocker seem designed specifically to mock your leaking boots. You could eat off these shutters. You haven't eaten since yesterday morning. The summons in your damp grip is standard fare. Marcus Thistleby, cloth merchant, accused of fraudulent measurements and deceptive scales. Twice before he's faced similar charges. Twice before the complaints vanished into the clerk's bottomless desk drawer. This time, they assure you, there are witnesses. This time, they swear it will matter. You've heard such promises before. Lifting the heavy brass knocker feels like raising a siege hammer. 3 thunderous raps echo through the square. You wait. Rain trickles from your hood down your neck, finding the tear in your jerkins stitching with unerring accuracy. You knock again. A window creaks open above. Candlelight silhouettes a man's head and shoulders. Then, without a word, the shutter slams closed. Footsteps descend. The door opens to reveal Thistleby himself. Velvet doublet, trimmed beard, expression like he's just stepped in something you left behind. You open your mouth to recite the summons, holding the parchment with what you hope passes for weary authority. He doesn't even glance at it. No, he says. Then he slams the door with enough force to rattle your teeth. The knocker bounces once, mocking you. You stare at the wood grain, weighing options. Writing him up for non-compliance requires magistrate signatures. The clerk's office is locked. Knocking again might earn you bruised knuckles and a formal complaint. So you do what all underpaid constables do, you wait. Leaning against the doorframe, you roll your aching shoulders and try to shelter under the eaves. The rain doesn't care. It slants sideways, soaking your leggings and dripping from your nose. The street stands empty. The lute has stopped. Shutters along the lane close like disapproving eyelids. You are the only fool awake in this part of town. Time passes without ceremony. The candle in the upstairs window flickers, dims, flares again. You count minutes by your teeth chattering. Somewhere down the lane, a dog barks, then yelps as if kicked. A slop bucket tips over behind you. You don't investigate. Eventually, The door creaks ajar again. Not Thistleby this time. A servant boy younger than you, dressed better than you, holding a jingling leather pouch. Master Thistleby regrets the misunderstanding. He recites tonelessly. He hopes this might smooth the parchment. You eye the pouch. Enough coin to buy silence, or at least make you walk away and forget his name. Your stomach growls. You pretend it's the rain. No, you say? The boy's frown suggests this script didn't cover refusal. It's generous, he insists. You shake your head. He's been summoned. The servant shifts uncomfortably. He's not home. You almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you take the pouch and hurl it back through the doorway. It lands with a clink, splattering mud on fine rugs. The boy flinches. Footsteps approach from within. The steward appears, thick-waisted, permanently scowling, face unaccustomed to the word no. He sizes you up like a butcher inspecting spoiled meat. You've got some nerve, he sneers, nostrils flaring at your stench. You explain about the summons again, pointing to the seal. He doesn't look. Instead, he steps forward, forcing you back into the rain. Lice-ridden beggar, he mutters, reeking of lavender and privilege. Playing at lawman. He leans closer. File your little paper. It'll burn by morning. And you? You'll still be a mutt with a stick, pretending to matter. The door closes. Not slammed this time. Just firmly, finally shut. You stand there as the street empties completely. No wind. Just the soft, insistent patter of rain on thatch and your own soaked shoulders. You glance at the pouch visible under the door. It's not moving. Neither are you. Eventually, you walk away. Each step squelches. The mud has grown colder, seeping past your boot seams, soaking socks that haven't been dry since Sunday. The town seems to exhale as you pass. Drains gurgle. Wood creaks. Rats hold council in unseen tunnels. You pass drunkards shouting at a fence post. They don't notice you. Even the moon can't be bothered to show itself tonight. Back in your room, you peel off your waterlogged cloak. It weighs as much as a butchered hog, and sit on your cot's edge without lighting a candle. In the darkness, you picture Thistleby's face, but it's already fading. The summons arrives at dawn like an unwelcome creditor, pressed into your hand by a page who won't meet your eyes. You recognize the red wax seal before unfolding the quarterly assizes. Never a reward. Always a performance where you're expected to present arrests like some trained monkey, ideally without embarrassing the town too thoroughly. You chew the last heel of stale bread as you walk, working around a loose molar. The ink on your arrest notes has bled from yesterday's rain, but most remains legible. Two drunks who gnawed a tavern bench to splinters. A baker's apprentice who flung dung at the tax clerk. One vaguely treasonous comment from a pantsless man in the stocks. You trim the insults to the ones that sounded rehearsed, hoping they might amuse the court. You're trying to be helpful. You always are. The assizes convene in the town hall, a damp stone monument to municipal indifference. Warped benches, sagging ceiling beams, pigeons holding parliament in the rafters. The judge perches atop a dais that resembles a pulpit more than a seat of justice, flanked by clerks, scribes, and a bailiff who could crush you under one boot and still have room for breakfast. You bow upon entering, tunic damp with nervous sweat. The judge flips through his notes like you've personally offended the parchment. Name: Constable Ward, my lord. Ah, yes. Run. Ward, you repeat. Right, Ward. He waves a dismissive hand. Present your cases quickly. The weather disagrees with my stomach. You step forward, voice steady despite the scratch in your throat. The two drunks were found attempting to dismantle furniture with their teeth. One succeeded. The baker's apprentice was caught flinging excrement after failing to pay a flour tax. The third had shouted, "Down with the bishop's nose," logged as both heresy and satire, just in case. The judge looks unimpressed. The bailiff chuckles. You wrote this rubbish yourself? You nod. You spelled apprentice with 3 E's. You look down. You did. The judge sighs. Fines for the first 2. Half-day stocks for the third. He leans forward. Honestly, Ward, or was it Run? You must bring us something worth sentencing. This isn't a nursery. You nod again. You don't mention the biting, the shouting, the nudity. You don't describe wading through piss water to catch them. You just bow. The accused are ushered in, the drunks still drunk, one waving at you. The baker's apprentice scowls at his sentence, then turns to the judge. Better there than standing next to Sir Snot here. He jerks a thumb at you. The courtroom erupts. You remain stoic. Professionals don't flinch at nicknames. The judge chuckles. Mind your manners, lad. But yes, that is an unfortunate nose. You resist touching it. As sentencing concludes, you wait for dismissal. Instead, the judge leans forward, squinting at another parchment. One more matter. A failure of detainment. A man escaped the pillory under your watch. You stiffen. 3 weeks ago. An old thief with sapling legs, wriggling free while you fended off rock-throwing boys. 1 drew blood. 2 fled. The third's father reported you for rough handling. The thief vanished into a dung cart. You start to explain. The judge waves it away like gnats. You were responsible. He escaped. There will be consequences. The bailiff hands you a citation. You don't read it yet. You know what it says. 1 shilling fine for dereliction of duty. You have exactly 1 shilling left. The clerk makes a note. The judge adjourns with a groan. The drunks slap backs and mimic sneezes. Sir Snot. The bailiff smirks as he collects inkwells. You remain standing until the room empties. Your boots stick slightly to the damp floor. Outside, the air hangs thick with manure and disappointment. Clouds debate whether to rain again. The square teems with townsfolk pretending not to watch you pass. A woman hawks boiled onions near the pillory, offering you one with a wink. You shake your head. Back at the office, Thomas is absent. Small mercy. The fire's dead. Someone stole your chair. You sit on the floor and transcribe the day's events. Drunks fined. Apprentice stocks. Judge unamused. Citation received for dereliction. Reason: failure to maintain pillory custody during youth disturbance. You pause, then add, stone to the ear. Swelling subsided. No apology issued. You don't log the nickname. You already know it'll stick. The priest arrives unannounced just as you're gnawing the last edible corner of your morning crust. He doesn't knock. He assaults the door like he owns the very hinges, announcing himself with the pomp of someone expecting heavenly trumpets. Father Ilrich, he proclaims, though he insists on your reverence, carries about him the unmistakable aura of damp wool and moral superiority. Wrapped in black robes like a bat in mourning, his expression suggests he's already judged your soul and found it lacking proper polish. He doesn't request, he commands. There's heresy in the bookshop, he declares, as if the words themselves should send you sprinting for your staff. Blasphemous scribblings. Latin defaced with filth. The man threatens the very fabric of our parish. You don't ask how a bookseller in a town where half the population can't spell their own names became a theological threat. You don't mention last week, when this same priest accused a goat of demonic possession because it sneezed during Massachusetts. You simply rise, brush the crumbs from your knees, and reach for your staff. The bookshop crouches between the cooper's and a cobbler's stall, both long since outpacing it in profitability. The sign overhead is cracked, the letters faded to vague suggestions. The door hinges shrieking like a tortured cat when you push inside. The interior smells of dust, damp parchment, and the particular musk of ideas left too long in dark places. Shelves sag under the weight of forgotten treatises. A one-eyed cat observes you from atop a ledger stack, tail flicking with what might be disdain. The bookseller emerges from the back room, a wiry, ink-stained relic named Old Win who's lived here longer than the cobblestones have been laid. He blinks at you like an owl startled into daylight. Father Ilrich jabs a finger before you can speak. That shelf there. Middle row. Red spine. Third from left. The book in question is more pamphlet than tome. Water-stained. Mouse-nibbled. Its cover bearing only a faded symbol you vaguely recall from a sermon about dangerous interpretations. You flip it open. Latin, mostly, though some pages bear scribbled marginalia, uneven, heavily crossed out, full of underlinings. One section references Matthew's Gospel, though whether in praise or protest is unclear. Another contains a diagram that might be theological or might be a terribly drawn sheep. Unlicensed annotations, the priest hisses. An attack on the sacraments. Possibly Lutheran. Possibly worse. You glance at old Win, who has crossed his arms, looking more irritated than afraid. It's Erasmus, he says flatly. Badly translated. I didn't write the notes. Bought it for a penny off a merchant who reeked of cabbage. Probably copied by some student trying to impress his tutor with half-learned Greek. You nod as if this explains everything. It doesn't. You're not entirely sure who Erasmus is, but you're fairly certain he's not in your chain of command. Father Ilrich snatches the pamphlet and flutters the pages like he's shaking sin from them. This isn't scholarship, it's poison. Old Win doesn't budge. It's poor penmanship. That's all. You step between them before the priest's spittle can reach your face. The last time Ilrich got worked up indoors, he knocked over a candle and nearly burned down the tannery. I have to bring you in, you say, keeping your voice carefully neutral. Just for questioning. Old Win sighs like this was inevitable. Of course you do, he mutters. God forbid anyone think for themselves. As you move to take his arm, he doesn't resist. He doesn't flee. He simply spits. A small, symbolic glob that lands dead center on your boot, right in the crack where it'll fester until the next rain. You stare down at it, too tired for anger. You don't retaliate. You don't scold. You just nod, place a hand lightly on his shoulder, and guide him toward the door. The cat watches you go, tail still flicking, possibly amused. The walk to the jailhouse is silent, but for the priest's muttered psalms. Old Win says nothing. You say less. Townsfolk glance, then look away quickly. A boy throws a pebble that misses both you and the priest. The jailhouse isn't imposing, just a stone building near the south edge, mostly used for drunks and tax evaders. The lock screeches louder than the inmates. You hand Old Win over to the watchman, a thick-browed man who smells faintly of aged cheese. He asks for charges. You provide them. He shrugs and leads Old Win to a cell. No ceremony, no trial date, just a bench, a bucket, and a slot for bread. You linger as the door closes. Old Win's eyes find yours through the bars. Not angry now, just resigned. Will I be released? You don't answer. You don't know. You nod once, as if to say something conclusive, then turn to leave. Behind you, the priest clasps your shoulder. You've served the Lord today, he says, reeking of incense and self-satisfaction. You resist pointing out you now smell of ink, dust, and another man's spit. Back at the constable's room, you remove your boots, shake off the worst of the damp, and sit to record the day's events. Name, Old Win. Occupation, bookseller. Charge, possession of unlicensed material. Note, claimed Erasmus. Priest unmoved. Action, detained. Resistance, minimal, spit on boot. Status, in holding. Outcome, TBD. You hesitate at the last line, pen hovering. You know the priest won't follow up. You know the mayor won't care. You know Old Win will be forgotten by week's end. You look at the drying ink, at the name you're already forgetting how to spell. The riot erupts like a ruptured boil, festering just long enough beneath the surface that everyone pretends not to notice until the pus comes flooding out. You're returning from the jailhouse when the commotion outside the tavern hits your ears, louder than usual even by this town's generous standards. Wooden tankards slam on tables. Curses fly thicker than summer gnats. A woman's laughter rises, then cuts off abruptly. By the time you round the corner, the crowd has doubled. The air hangs thick with spilled ale and wood smoke, already tinged with the metallic bite of first blood. You push through the ring of gawkers and step into the muddy arena where two men strain to throttle each other with arms like overgrown ham hocks. One's missing half his shirt and both his shoes. The other wears what might have been a priest's robe in another life, now reduced to sweat-soaked tatters. They're locked in that slow, graceless dance of men who've drunk beyond thought, but not quite beyond violence. Neither is winning. Neither intends to stop. You raise your voice, not quite shouting, just projecting that tone constables learn early, the one that suggests consequences without promising them. You call for peace, for restraint, for basic human decency. They don't hear you, or they do and don't care. You try again, stepping closer. That's when someone from the crowd yells, "Papist piss drinker," and the words land like a torch in dry thatch. You don't see who said it. Doesn't matter. The spark has caught. Suddenly, it's not just a fight anymore. It's a brawl. A young man lunges at the shirtless combatant, slips in a puddle, and takes 3 others down with him. A woman hurls her tankard into the fray, then ducks behind a barrel. Someone throws a chicken. You're reasonably sure it's dead, but you don't stop to check. The chaos spreads like ale from a cracked keg. You wade in, staff in hand, trying to separate bodies without adding to the damage. You grab one man by the collar, haul him off another, and catch an elbow to the jaw for your trouble. You stagger back, staff swinging reflexively, and connect with someone's knee. He goes down with a grunt, then bites your ankle. You shake him loose and try again. Shouting surrounds you now, some of it yours, but no one's listening. A stool arcs through the air like some drunken comet and crashes into your shoulder, splintering against your jerkin with a crunch that may or may not have come from your collarbone. You hit the ground hard, breath knocked clean out, staff tumbling from numb fingers. Mud seeps instantly into the fresh tear in your sleeve, and something warm trickles down your back. Blood or sweat or beer, possibly all 3. Someone stumbles into you. You push back without thinking. He reels away, arms flailing, and knocks over a brazier placed too close to the tavern wall. Sparks fly. Flames don't catch. Thank whatever saints still bother with this town. But the stench of singed wool joins the existing bouquet of fear and piss clinging to everything. Then you feel it, warm and wet spreading across your chest. You look down to find a gray-bearded stranger collapsed against you, nose bleeding freely, his life's essence soaking into your jerkin in Rorschach patterns. He mumbles something that might be a prayer or a recipe or his dog's name. You try to stand. He clings like a drunk to last hopes. You shove harder, and he topples backward into the mud. Doesn't get up. That's when the watch arrives. They come in with truncheons raised and expressions polished to bureaucratic indifference. 2 of them, neither familiar, both too clean for this hour, too young, too smug. They don't ask questions. They don't separate combatants. They go straight for the man on the ground. Then they turn to you. The taller one steps forward. Who started this? You try to explain. You were called here. You tried to break it up. You give names. You point to the robe, the stool, the blood. He frowns. You're shouting. You blink. He nods. Disorderly conduct. Inciting confusion. You stare. You're still clutching your shoulder. Your sleeves torn. Your chest soaked. The crowd has gone quiet now, watching this new entertainment with the keen interest of people who've just realized the real sport lies elsewhere. The shorter watchman chimes in. You're not authorized to raise your voice above parish limits without clerical cause. You point out, as calmly as possible, that someone shouted papist, that a man has collapsed, that you were struck with a stool in the line of duty. The taller one shrugs. Duty doesn't excuse tone. They take your staff. Don't even ask. The younger one fumbles it, drops it in the mud. You are officially under arrest. The crowd parts like the Red Sea before Moses, if Moses were 2 overzealous watchmen dragging a battered constable through the muck. Someone spits near your feet. A black-eyed woman claps mockingly as you pass. No one helps. No one stops this. Most look relieved it wasn't them. You try to ask if they've seen Thomas, if someone will speak to the mayor, but the shorter one cuts you off. If you're innocent, it'll sort itself tomorrow. You arrive at the constable's jailhouse not as an officer, but as a prisoner. The irony isn't lost on the watchman stationed there, who raises an eyebrow but says nothing as the door creaks open and you're deposited inside. The cell smells of old feet and forgotten bread. There's a bench, a wall hook, and a bucket. No fire. No light. No supper. They don't ask if you're hurt. Don't check your shoulder. Don't offer water. The door clicks shut with terrible finality. You sit in the corner, back against cold stone, trying not to breathe too deeply. Your shoulder pulses in time with your heartbeat. The jerkin clings to your chest like a second skin, stiff and sticky. You think about removing it, but the smell of blood might be worse than the discomfort. You rest your head against the wall and stare at the opposite stones. There's a crack in the mortar shaped vaguely like a sheep, or maybe a bishop in a fancy hat. You try not to care. You fail. Dawn finds you still sitting against the jailhouse wall when the lock grates open with the subtlety of a dying hog. The watchman's silhouette fills the doorway, backlit by gray morning light that does nothing to soften his scowl. "You're released," he mutters, sounding personally offended by the necessity. No apology, no explanation, just the unspoken accusation that you've inconvenienced him by existing. You rise stiffly, every joint protesting the movement. Your jerkin has fused to your chest overnight, blood and sweat, and ale creating some unholy adhesive. The watchman wrinkles his nose and steps back as you pass. Outside, the town exhales damp morning breath into your face. The streets glisten with last night's rain, the gutters swollen with leaves and worse things. A sounder of pigs has breached someone's fence and now roots enthusiastically along the market lane, their snouts buried in what appears to be a pile of cabbage and old rags. You step around them, boots making that familiar squelching noise that will haunt your dreams. Your shoulder twinges with every movement. The orders for your morning are already etched into your bones like the 10 Commandments on stone. Collection duty. 7 outstanding debts in your ledger. All familiar names. 3 shopkeepers, 2 who'll plead poverty, 1 who'll threaten violence. 2 widows, 1 mourning, 1 bitter. The chronic drunkard, who'll offer to sell you his shoes again. The fishmonger, who once promised to scale you like a mackerel. You're expected to collect payment or issue formal warnings. You're expected to do this with diplomacy, civility, and the full authority of your office. You have a cracked staff, a bruised shoulder, and a reputation currently ranking somewhere below spoiled milk. The baker comes first, 2 weeks delinquent on his flour tax. He answers the door with arms dusted white, his expression already curdled. You present the notice. He stares at it like you've handed him a dead rat. "Business has been slow," he says, as if this explains everything. You nod. "Make a mark on your list. Move on." Next is Widow Alden, who owes for chimney repairs she swears she never requested. Her door opens a crack when you knock. Bloodshot eyes. The air inside smells of boiled onions and despair. You explain the debt. She explains that the press gang took her son last month. No word since. You write, "unable to pay," in the margin and leave without another question. The fishmonger waits outside his stall, knife in one hand, half a haddock in the other. He doesn't let you speak. "Back again, you eel-brained bastard." The knife flashes as he points it at you. "Come to steal my scales and piss on my profits." You try to explain the notice, but the stench of fish makes your eyes water and your patience evaporate. He jabs the blade into his cutting board. "Take it up with the mayor, or God, or the harbor bottom, whichever you reach first." You nod. Back away slowly. Try not to trip over the barrel of squid guts someone left strategically placed behind you. The cobbler isn't home. His neighbor, a woman with suspiciously new shoes, tells you he fled last week after a disagreement involving a goat, a chimney, and a widow who wasn't as widowed as she claimed. You don't ask for details. Mark it absconded and keep walking. By midday, your shoulder has stiffened into something resembling petrified wood. Your stomach sends urgent messages via a series of resentful growls. You pass a market stall where a child picks through bruised apples, and for one absurd moment, you envy his certainty that today will bring fruit. At the corner of Saddle Street, something wet and foul smacks between your shoulder blades. You turn just in time to see a grubby-faced boy duck behind a cart, giggling. The smell hits, human waste, flung with impressive accuracy. You consider chasing him, but your legs ache and your dignity has taken worse hits this week. You wipe your cloak with a handful of straw and try not to gag. A noble's carriage thunders around the bend as you cross near the square. 2 gleaming horses. A driver who looks personally offended by your existence. You wave your staff and step back onto the curb, but the wheel still misses you by inches. The mud it kicks up splatters across your boots and tunic. You're close enough to see the lace on the noble's cuffs, the smug tilt of his chin, the feather in his hat. He doesn't see you at all. At the mayor's office, you've collected exactly 1 payment. 3 copper coins from a carpenter's apprentice who handed them over like confessing to murder. The rest is failures, excuses, threats. Your ledger is mostly crossed out names and ink smudges. The clerk receives you with all the enthusiasm of a man handed a dead fish. He sits behind a desk buried in papers he clearly has no intention of reading, takes your ledger with 2 fingers as if afraid it might bite, and flips through with mounting disdain. When he finishes, he picks up his pen and scratches a note at the bottom of some private parchment. Failed collections on 5 of 7. Pay doc accordingly. You open your mouth to explain. He doesn't look up. I'm sure they all had excellent reasons, he says. But reasons don't build roads. You don't argue. There's nothing to say that won't cost you more than it's worth. He waves a hand like shooing smoke. Dismissed. Outside, the sky darkens again. Rain gathers in the west. Heavy clouds with bruised undersides hanging low over the chapel spire. You look down at your ruined boots, your muddy tunic, the ink staining your fingers. You think about the boy in the dung. Then you start walking because there's nothing else to do. The pounding on your tavern door comes hard enough to rattle the loose hinge that's been threatening to give way since Easter. Not the measured knock of official business, nor the furtive tap of late-night informants. This is the sound of someone determined to wake the dead, or at least rattle the bones of those not entirely sure they wish to keep living. You rise from your cot, joints protesting like unoiled hinges, and open the door to find one of the mayor's pages standing in the hallway. He holds a rolled parchment sealed with enough wax to drown a kitten, wearing the expression of boys who've never had to scrub blood from their boots. You're to report to the square, he announces before dusk. You ask what for. He doesn't answer, just thrusts the parchment into your hands and struts off, chin lifted, as if he's delivered something noble rather than another nail in your coffin. Breaking the seal reveals words as cold as the ink they're written with. You've been summoned to stand for order at the evening execution. 1 thief. Public hanging. Signed and stamped with all the bureaucratic indifference of a man ordering mutton for supper. You pull on your cloak, still damp from yesterday's misadventures, grab your staff, and head toward the square. By the time you arrive, the platform's already assembled. Rough planks, dark stains that might be weather or might be something else. The gallows frame rising like some skeletal gateway to a more literal hell. The rope swings gently in the evening breeze, thick and coarse, tied in the shape of a question no one wants answered. Torches gutter around the square, their light catching puddles and slick stones, casting long, wavering reflections that make the world seem both softer and crueler. A small crowd gathers, speaking in hushed tones that hold no real reverence. Just curiosity with an undercurrent of rot. Executions remain theater, even when everyone pretends otherwise. You recognize faces. The smith's daughter. The drunk who tried selling you his own boots last winter. The priest's servant who always smells faintly of apples. None look surprised. You wonder if you do. They bring the condemned boy out shortly after you take your post beside the platform. You know his face before they announce it. It's the same boy you pulled from behind the cooper's barrels on Monday. The sausage thief. The one who spat and kicked and never cried. They say he stole again. Bread this time. Not even much of it. Just enough to draw the wrong vendor's attention. There's no mention of how long he's been hungry. No explanation of who turned him in. No record of anyone speaking for him. The ledger simply reads, repeat offender. That's enough. He looks smaller than you remember. Barefoot again. Tunic more holes than fabric. His hair's been shorn short. Lice probably. And his face has gone tight and sharp, as though the week between arrests has aged him into something brittle and final. He doesn't look around as they walk him. His eyes stay fixed on the platform steps, as if counting them or daring himself not to trip. No family came. You check the list. No names offered. None requested. When you asked the steward if anyone had claimed the body, he shrugged. Not worth the wood. Your job is to stand for order. That's what the parchment said. Not to touch the rope. Not to speak to the boy. Not to interfere. Just stand near the platform. Wear your badge. Hold your staff. And lend the proceedings a veneer of legitimacy. As if a constable's presence makes the noose more holy, more just, more right. No one believes that. Least of all you. The executioner stands ready. Hooded, silent. Hands calloused from years of grim familiarity. He adjusts the rope with the care of a man tightening a saddle girth, then nods to the magistrate, who steps forward to read the charges. His voice carries in that particular way officials learn, flat, dry, drained of all music. Matthew of no house. Age estimated 12. Crime, theft repeated. Sentence, death by hanging per township ordinance. No prayer, no plea, no defense. The boy doesn't speak. The magistrate doesn't look at him. The crowd listens with the vague attention of people hearing a sermon they've memorized. The boy climbs the steps. Doesn't stumble. The rope's adjusted. He flinches when it brushes his shoulder, but doesn't resist. The executioner steps back. The magistrate nods. Someone coughs. Then a voice rings out, slurred, loud, half laughing. Should have been the mud up there. You turn your head. A drunk, naturally. Face red. Eyes glazed. Tankard mostly empty. He's pointing at you. Others glance over. A few chuckle. One or two nod. You say nothing. Don't move. Stare straight ahead as if you've gone deaf. As if the platform has absorbed all sound and meaning. The trapdoor releases. The boy drops. The rope snaps taut. A sound escapes the crowd. Not quite gasp, not quite sigh. The body sways slightly, one foot twitching once before going still. The wind shifts. Torches flicker in unison. You remain at your post until the square empties. No announcement of dispersal. No cries for justice or mercy. Just the slow thinning of bodies, footsteps fading, a few murmured comments carried on the breeze. The magistrate leaves first. Then the executioner. Then two clerks with bored expressions and ink-stained fingers. The priest lingers, as if unsure whether to bless the scene or simply enjoy the silence. You stay. Eventually, someone tosses a rag over the boy's head. Not from compassion, just to keep the rats from starting too early. You watch the rope sway in torchlight, the platform creaking softly under its weight. You know the body won't be taken down until morning. Standard procedure. Visibility. Deterrence. Message. You've seen it before. You turn and walk home in silence. The wind's picked up, tugging at your cloak, whispering through alleyways like a thief checking for unsecured windows. Your boots are caked with square mud and old sawdust. Each step feels heavier than it should. Your shoulder still aches. Your stomach's empty. Your throat tastes of rust. You pass townsfolk on your way. Faces you know. Names you've written down more times than you can count. They part for you without speaking, eyes averted as though your presence is contagious. No one offers a nod. No one asks how the hanging went. You reach your room above the tavern just as the last torches gutter out. Remove your boots. Unwrap your cloak. Sit on the edge of your cot without lighting a candle. In the darkness, you picture the boy's face again. But it's already fading. The sheriff arrives like Judgment Day on horseback. No warning, no polite letter, just the thunder of hooves on cobblestones and the sudden silence that falls when power enters a space unaccustomed to its presence. He only rides in when things have gone sufficiently wrong to risk scrutiny from higher authorities. You hear the boots first, too clean, too deliberate. Then the voice, sharp and already annoyed. Which one of you is Ward? You raise your hand before fully standing. The sheriff's gaze locks onto you like he's stepped in something unpleasant and is deciding whether it was deliberate. Tall, narrow-faced, with an expression that makes you feel guilty for crimes you haven't committed. His cloak is waxed, his boots polished, his gloves, actual gloves, still carrying a faint lavender scent. You haven't seen gloves in months. You try not to stare. Office, he says. Now. You nod, fall into step behind him, and try to straighten your spine despite the dull ache in your shoulder. The constable's office shrinks in his presence, the walls seeming to recoil in shame. He looks around, cataloging every stain, every warped floorboard, every symptom of municipal decay. His lips purse. Ledger, he demands, holding out one immaculate hand. You retrieve it from beneath the bench where it lives beside a sack of kindling and 3 dead spiders. The corners are damp. Pages curl like dying leaves. One sports a perfect hole, mice or perhaps one of the larger beetles that have taken to nesting near the chamber pot. You hand it over with both hands, as if ceremony might dignify this exchange. He flips it open, scans the first page, and stops. Did you write this? You nod. He raises an eyebrow. In English. You nod again. A longer pause. You're aware, I assume, that the Crown prefers Latin for official tallies. You open your mouth to explain that no one taught you Latin, that your predecessor kept records in English because no one here reads Latin anyway, that magistrates only care about seals, that the town clerk can barely spell his own name. But the sheriff has already moved on. Your looks like a drunkard fell over mid-stroke. He squints. And is this meant to say offender or awful? You lean forward. Offender, sir. He squints harder. Then why does it resemble entrails? You say nothing. You've learned it's safest to let ridicule pass like bad weather. Stand still. Keep your eyes low. Hope it blows over before the roof gives way. He continues reading, his lips curling further with each page. This entry has no date. Rain smeared the ink, sir. This one has no name. He refused to give one, sir. This page has no details whatsoever. You take a breath. That page was chewed by a mouse. He looks up sharply. Excuses aren't policy. No, sir. He slams the ledger shut with a sound like a headsman's axe falling and thrusts it back at you like it might stain his gloves. You are to rewrite this entire record by Monday. In Latin, with proper indexing. You stare, unsure if you heard correctly. Sir, I was never. Then learn. You try again. There's no one here who can teach it. The parish priest refused last spring when I asked for instruction. Then you'll be replaced, the sheriff says, already turning toward the door. You follow him outside, words clinging uselessly to your throat. The street has gone quiet again, townsfolk pretending not to watch from behind shutters and cracked doors. You wonder what they see when they look at you now. A constable, a joke, a placeholder for someone taller, cleaner, better versed in dead languages. He stops at the edge of the square and turns for a final verdict. I've seen hedgehogs keep better records than this. He gestures to the stocks. Stand there. Look useful. Then he mounts his horse and rides off, trailing polish and privilege behind him like a banner. You walk slowly to your post beside the stocks. The morning light is unforgiving, exposing every splinter, every stain, every failing carved into the weathered wood. No one's restrained today. You almost envy them. You stand there for hours, maybe days. Time has lost all meaning. The chapel clock ticks past without chiming. A dog lifts its leg on the stocks. You don't stop it. You scratch at your arm where something's been nesting under your sleeve since Tuesday. A bite, probably lice. You know the progression. The initial itch, the swelling, the spread, the endless scratching. You dig in harder, just for something to do. The skin breaks. Blood wells in a thin red line. You wipe it on your cloak. No one notices. No one ever does. That night, you lie in your room above the tavern. The air sits heavy and stale. The hearth hasn't seen fire in weeks. Damp has crept up from the floorboards and settled into the corners like an unwelcome tenant. You don't light a candle. You know this room better than your own reflection. You drop your staff beside the cot and sit slowly, boots still caked with the filth of a dozen streets. The wood groans under your weight. There's a smear across your sleeve, dried mud or possibly remnants of Wednesday's stew-flinging incident. You don't bother scraping it off. It's not the worst thing you've worn this week. You lean forward, elbows on knees, and look at your hands. Knuckles cracked, fingers stiff, ink stains mixing with old scabs to form a roadmap of efforts no one will ever commend. You haven't been warm all day. Your joints already whisper warnings about the coming frost. But they still move. For now, you pull the ledger from your satchel. It's heavier than it should be. You thumb through it, past the fines, the punishments, the half-blank pages where rain or rodents stole justice. You find a clear spot in the back corner. There, with a quill you don't remember re-inking, you write your own name. Not a signature. Just your name, first and last. It looks unfamiliar, like it belongs to someone else, someone cleaner, someone who once had hopes for this job. The ink smears when your hand brushes it. You stare a moment longer, then close the ledger and set it aside. It doesn't matter if anyone sees it. No one will. The mayor's clerk will glance at your entries come Monday, skim the notes, then file them in a box labeled miscellaneous. One day, that box will be discarded to make room for newer boxes with newer names written in neater Latin. You lie back without removing your boots. The laces are stiff and crusted. You don't have the energy. The cot's too short, as always, so your feet hang over the edge. You pull your cloak up to your chest and try not to think about the damp seeping through the seams. Outside, the town has gone quiet. Shutters drawn. Tavern dark. The chapel window glows faintly with candlelight that isn't meant for you. Across the square, someone walks the evening watch, steady boots, smooth stride, cloak fluttering. Not Thomas. Not you. Too tall. Too confident. A new constable, perhaps. One of the sheriff's recommendations. Someone fresh. Someone unbruised by the week. You'll meet him soon enough. Probably be told to train him. You picture the week behind you, the boy in the stocks, the drunkard's boot in your ribs, the citation for shouting too loud, the hanging, the clerk docking your pay without looking up, the sermon. You think, briefly, about what it might mean to quit. But then you remember. Quitting implies there's something else waiting. Another job. Another town. Another version of yourself. There isn't. There's just this. The post. The ledger. The boots. You'll do it again next week. You'll wake Monday to the bell, pull on your damp cloak, and chase another thief through another alley. Your shoulder will still ache where the stool hit. You'll find a man who won't pay, drag a woman who won't forgive, and write it all down in ink no one will read. You won't be thanked, but you'll show up, because that's what you do.